12 most mysterious ancient discoveries in history that even top scientists can't explain. Hello, and welcome to the Ancient History channel. My friends, have you ever felt that history isn't really old the way we often think, but more like a thick book filled with pages that have yet to be opened? There are mysteries that have lain there for thousands of years, buried deep beneath the earth, only to be uncovered and leave even the world's leading scientists stunned, unable to explain them. For hundreds of years, archaeologists have tirelessly excavated, searched, and tried to decode the past, and yet the more they discover, the more they realize. There are things that go far beyond our current understanding. From skeletal remains bearing strange markings, to artifacts with no clear purpose, to structures that even modern technology struggles to replicate, all of them raise one big question: what did ancient humans truly know? In this video, we're going to explore 12 of the most mysterious ancient discoveries, stories that have left even the top scientists completely baffled. So, are you ready? If you are, let's dive into the very first discovery right now. The mummified monk, inside a forgotten hidden chamber of a temple in China. You know, our world has always been a vast treasure trove of mysterious history. Some secrets are actively sought out, but others are never meant to be found, only to unexpectedly reveal themselves in ways no one could have imagined. And the story of an ancient temple near Mount Song in Henan, China, is a perfect example of that, one that leaves people both fascinated and deeply unsettled when they think back on it. It all began not with archaeologists, but with a group of thieves who broke into the Daming Wang Temple in China, intending to steal valuable treasures. However, before they could take anything, they were discovered and forced to flee in panic. At first, it seemed like nothing more than a failed robbery, but that very incident accidentally uncovered a secret that had been buried for centuries. To prevent future break-ins, the temple reported the incident to local authorities. Soon after, experts from a cultural heritage preservation agency were sent to inspect the entire area. And it was during this investigation that a hidden underground chamber within the ancient temple was gradually revealed, leaving everyone in shock. What made the discovery so astonishing? As they stepped into the dark, damp space of the chamber, what appeared before them was not gold, silver, or precious artifacts, but the mummified body of a monk, lying silently as if in an endless sleep. What's truly remarkable is that the body was almost perfectly preserved. Despite having existed for hundreds of years, possibly even longer, it had not decomposed in the usual way. This left experts in awe, as such natural preservation in near-perfect condition is extremely rare. But the mystery didn't stop there. Right beside the mummy, they discovered a small wooden box, intricately crafted. Every detail suggested it was far from ordinary. Naturally, the question on everyone's mind was, what was inside the box? When the box was finally opened, everyone present was left speechless. Inside was not gold or jewels, as many had expected, but a strange small object that carried an unmistakably sacred presence. At first, no one could identify exactly what it was. Because of that, the artifact was taken away for further detailed study. After a series of analyses, the mystery was finally solved. The object inside the box was a sarira, a highly significant type of relic in Buddhism, often believed to be crystallized, remains left behind after the cremation of accomplished monks. This discovery immediately gave the entire finding deeper meaning. It wasn't just a preserved body. This could have been the remains of a highly respected monk of special status. To confirm this, researchers continued searching for more clues within the temple grounds. Eventually, they uncovered a stone stele inscribed with ancient text. The content of that inscription helped unravel the entire story. According to the inscription, the monk in the hidden chamber was identified as Yuanren, a Japanese monk who had traveled to China during the Tang dynasty to study Buddhism. After many years of practice and learning, he chose to remain at Daming Wang Temple until his death. And perhaps it was because of his special role that his body was placed in the hidden chamber, along with the sarira, preserved as a way to honor and commemorate him. A forgotten underground chamber, an almost perfectly preserved mummy, and a sacred relic carefully hidden away. Was it all merely a coincidence, or a deliberate arrangement from centuries ago? We may never know for sure. But one thing is certain, this is truly a fascinating discovery, don't you think? The mummy that once awoke. Inside its coffin, terrifying archaeologists. A mummy that actually woke up inside its coffin? Does that sound frightening? Maybe even fictional? Anyone hearing it might assume it only exists in horror movies, right? I thought the same. But the truth behind this story is so chilling that even the most seasoned experts were left shaken. The story began during what seemed like an ordinary road construction project in a village in Qiqihar, Heilongjiang Province, China in 1999. While working, locals unexpectedly uncovered bluish bricks buried deep underground. At first, no one paid much attention, assuming they were just old building materials. But the more they dug, the more bricks appeared, until an entire wall slowly came into view. That's when everyone realized this was no ordinary discovery. It was very likely an ancient tomb. By then, night had fallen and work had to stop. But as you know, the more mysterious something is, the more it fuels curiosity and greed. That very night, two young men from the village secretly returned to the site. Bringing flashlights and tools, they decided to open the coffin in search of treasure. However, the moment the coffin lid was opened, it became a memory they would likely never want to relive. The body inside was not lying peacefully, as one might expect. Instead, it presented a horrifying scene. The mouth wide open as if crying for help, limbs twisted, clothing disheveled, everything suggesting a desperate struggle before death. Needless to say, the two young men were terrified. They fled in panic, not daring to stay even a second longer, and immediately reported the incident to local authorities. The next morning, an archaeological team quickly arrived and sealed off the site. But even those accustomed to working with ancient tombs felt a chill down their spines upon witnessing what lay inside. Initial examinations showed that the tomb was quite simple. There were no jewels or valuable burial items. Only the coffin, the body, and 26 coins from the Qing dynasty. Yet what drew the most attention was the body's near-perfect preservation. The skin, muscles, and joints remained intact, despite having been buried for over 200 years. Based on the skeletal structure, the remains were identified as those of a woman around 25 years old. Her eyes were rolled back, her mouth wide open, as if she had been desperately trying to breathe in her final moments. Another detail that caught experts' attention was that she had 3 pierced holes in her ears, suggesting she was not of ordinary status. She may have belonged to the Manchu nobility or been a concubine of a government official at the time, but that was only the beginning. When the body was taken to a laboratory for further analysis, experts discovered a black lotus-shaped object beneath the woman's legs. After examination, it was identified as a fully formed placenta. This meant she had been pregnant at the time of her death. However, she had not died from an infectious disease or a congenital condition, just a common illness. As her condition worsened, she fell into a deep coma. But due to the limited medical knowledge of that time, she was mistakenly declared dead. Her family quickly arranged a funeral and buried her. Sometime later, she woke up. But she awoke inside a sealed coffin, pitch dark with no air, no escape. She must have panicked, screamed, struggled, using every last bit of strength to call for help until she was completely exhausted and died in despair. The moment of being buried alive is something that deeply haunted the experts who uncovered the truth. Ironically, this very tragedy is also what preserved her body for nearly 300 years. As she struggled inside the coffin, she consumed the available oxygen, creating an environment with extremely low oxygen levels, ideal for preserving the body. A personal tragedy that became a mystery, haunting future generations. This story also helps explain why, in the past, when science and medicine were not yet advanced, people in countries like China and Vietnam often kept the deceased at home for 3, 5, or even 7 days before burial, perhaps to avoid tragedies like this one. 5 camels buried alive reveal a terrifying Inca ritual 500 years ago. In the arid coastal lands of Peru, where dust and sand blanket the traces of ancient civilizations, there is a story that makes anyone who hears it pause for a moment to reflect. This story took place in 2018 at the archaeological site of Tambo Viejo. There, scientists discovered 5 camelids, almost perfectly preserved, lying silently beneath the earth for over 500 years, as if they had only just been placed there yesterday. What truly sends a chill down your spine, however, isn't how well they were preserved, but the way they were found. Each of the 5 animals had been carefully decorated with vibrant items, ropes dyed in red, yellow, blue, and purple, along with feathers and even traces of paint on their faces. Altogether, it was as if they were telling the story of a mysterious Inca ritual from half a millennium ago. And it didn't stop there. As archaeologists continued their excavation, they found that 4 of the camelids had been buried together within a single structure, while the 5th lay separately in a nearby building. At first, this might not seem unusual, but the deeper they dug, the more unsettling the truth became. This arrangement was far from random. It reflected a carefully planned ritual. More disturbingly, these animals had not died before being buried, they were buried alive as part of a sacrificial ceremony. So why would the Inca do such a thing? Was this merely a religious ritual, or was there something deeper behind it? In Inca culture, camelids, especially those with brown and white coloring, were not just livestock. They carried deep spiritual meaning, serving as a bridge between humans and the gods. The colorful cords wrapped around their bodies symbolized important deities, such as Viracocha, the creator god, and the sun god, supreme beings who shaped the beliefs of an entire empire. Beyond that, surrounding the camel remains, scientists also found a range of familiar offerings: bird feathers, guinea pigs, corn cakes, and lima beans. These were all commonly used in major sacrificial ceremonies. This suggests that the event was not an isolated act, but part of a large-scale ritual gathering where people came together, shared food, and performed ceremonies to strengthen social bonds. In other words, this was not just about religion. Rituals like these also served as a form of political power for the Inca. By organizing sacrifices and communal feasts, they not only expressed devotion to their gods, but also reinforced their authority, built alliances, and maintained control over conquered territories. What surprised scientists the most is that in over 100 years of studying the Inca Empire, there had never been evidence of a camelid sacrifice ritual quite like this. That makes this discovery extremely rare, offering an entirely new perspective on both the spiritual and political life of the Inca. According to analysis, these rituals likely took place around the year 1500, near the final period of the Inca Empire, when it stood at the height of its power, yet was on the brink of major historical upheaval. So imagine this: if you were standing there 500 years ago, witnessing that ceremony, watching those beautifully adorned animals slowly being buried, would you see it as a sacred ritual or something that sends a chill down your spine? Don't hesitate to share your thoughts in the comments below. 14,000-year-old horse fossil discovered while digging a backyard swimming pool. It all happened on May 2nd, a day that started like any other. Workers began digging in the backyard to prepare for the construction of a swimming pool, a very common project in a hot place like Nevada. But after just a few scoops of earth, large bones suddenly appeared beneath the dry soil. At first, no one jumped to conclusions, but an uneasy feeling began to creep in. Just imagine yourself in that situation, standing in your own backyard and suddenly seeing bones emerging from the ground. Would you stay calm? The Perkins family couldn't. Instead of going closer to inspect the remains, they immediately called the police. When officers arrived, it took only a few minutes of inspection for them to reach a conclusion that left everyone both relieved and curious. These were not human remains. The reason was clear: the bones were far too large to belong to a human. But if not human, then what were they? That question led the homeowner, Matt Perkins, to seek expert help. They quickly contacted Joshua Bonde, a paleontologist working at the Nevada Science Center. When Bonde arrived and began examining the site, he immediately realized this was no ordinary find. Before long, he confirmed that the skeleton belonged to a prehistoric horse. Even that alone sounds historic, but what truly caught scientists' attention was the condition of the skeleton. From the shoulder bones to the legs and parts of the spine, nothing had been disturbed. Everything remained in its original position, even still connected as if the animal had only just died. This is extremely rare. Normally, after an animal dies, scavengers scatter the remains, but in this case, that hadn't happened. According to Bonde, there is only one likely explanation. The horse was buried very quickly before any scavengers could reach it. It may have been sudden mud, flooding, or some natural event that essentially froze that moment in time, preserving the skeleton intact for thousands of years. And the discovery didn't stop there. As they continued digging deeper, about 4 to 5 feet underground, the workers and researchers uncovered more bones, including parts of the jaw, rib cage, and additional vertebrae from soil taken out of the pool area, which was about 6.5 feet deep. Piece by piece, the puzzle came together, revealing a creature that lived in a time long before modern humans inhabited the region. Initial analysis suggests that this horse lived during the Ice Age, somewhere between 6,000 and 14,000 years ago. Back then, the area we now know as Las Vegas was not the dry desert you see today. It was once a vast wetland, home to many extinct giants such as mammoths, saber-toothed cats, ancient camels, and prehistoric wolves. To determine the fossil's exact age, bone samples will be sent to the U.S. Geological Survey for further analysis. But regardless of the final results, this discovery alone is enough to make anyone rethink the ground they're standing on. Wouldn't you agree? What's even more remarkable is what the Perkins family chose to do next. Instead of continuing construction as planned, they decided to pause building the pool. They chose to give scientists the space to fully excavate and study the site. Not only that, they also plan to donate the entire fossil to the Nevada Science Center for public display and education. It's not a decision everyone would make, because sometimes the value of the past is far greater than the comforts of the present. Isn't that incredible? 3,500-year-old metal hand found in an ancient tomb in Switzerland. Have you ever imagined that in the middle of a quiet field, where there's nothing but dirt, rocks, and grass, there could be a hidden secret capable of leaving the entire archaeological world stunned? What's even more surprising is that this mystery began with a group of amateur treasure hunters carrying metal detectors. If you haven't, then let's rewind to a day in October 2017. On that day, near Lake Biel in the canton of Bern, Switzerland, a group of hobbyists was scanning the ground as they had done many times before. After hours of finding nothing unusual, the signal from their metal detector suddenly changed. At first, they assumed it was just a coin or some ordinary artifact. But when they dug deeper, what emerged was not a coin or a typical object, but an ancient bronze hand, wearing a thin gold bracelet around its wrist. The hand was slightly smaller than a real human hand, yet it was crafted with remarkable precision. What stood out most was that the wrist was hollow inside, as if it had once been attached to something else. This detail immediately sparked a wave of speculation among experts. Was it a prosthetic, part of a statue, or perhaps an object used in some kind of spiritual ritual? And that wasn't all. At the same discovery site, the group also found a bronze dagger and several rib bones. When these items were brought to the Bern historical and Roman archaeological authorities, the experts' first reaction was confusion. They admitted they had never seen anything quite like it before. To determine its age, researchers analyzed the adhesive used to attach the gold to the wrist. The results showed it dated back to around 1500 to 1400 BC, placing it firmly in the Bronze Age. This timeline also matched the age of the dagger found nearby. The more they studied it, the clearer it became that this was no random discovery. So in the spring of the following year, 2018, archaeologists returned to the area to search for more clues. And just as expected, they uncovered an ancient grave near the village of Prel, not far from Lake Biel. Although the grave had been largely disturbed, several key pieces of evidence remained. The skeleton of an adult man, a spiral-shaped bronze hairpin, and tiny fragments of gold, perfectly matching the missing pieces from the gold bracelet on the metal hand. Beneath the grave was a small stone structure dating back to ancient times. It appeared that the owner of the bronze hand had intentionally placed it there. According to archaeologists, the hand had been deliberately positioned as part of a meaningful arrangement. So who was this man? Based on the findings, experts believe he was no ordinary individual. The gold-adorned hand was not just decorative, it symbolized power. In that era, gold was extremely rare, reserved only for elite members of society, possibly leaders or figures with spiritual significance. Because of this, an intriguing theory has emerged. The hand may not simply represent a human body part, but could carry symbolic meaning, perhaps even connected to deities or sacred rituals. And do you know what makes this discovery even more extraordinary? Until now, no metal artifact shaped like a human body part had ever been found in ancient Central Europe. In other words, This object is nearly one of a kind. Today, the bronze hand is displayed at the Biel Museum, yet its true purpose remains a mystery. So what do you think? Was it part of a prosthetic limb, a symbol of power, or a sacred object used in ancient rituals? The 260-day calendar of the ancient Maya civilization. You know, in the world of archaeology, there are often tiny traces that may seem meaningless, yet they can completely change how we understand an entire civilization. And this time, it's exactly that kind of story, all beginning with a few broken stone fragments lying quietly within an ancient site deep in the jungles of Guatemala. At the San Bartolo site in northern Guatemala, archaeologists excavated an ancient wall inside the Las Pinturas pyramid. During their research, they came across small fragments that, at first glance, didn't seem remarkable, but when the pieces were assembled and carefully analyzed, a strange symbol gradually emerged, shaped like a deer's head, with 2 dots and a single line above it. It sounds simple, but this very symbol captured the attention of scientists. According to experts, it is one of the earliest known glyphs of the famous 260-day Maya calendar, known as the Tzolk'in. Its age has been dated to around 200 to 300 BC, more than 2,000 years ago. At a time when many other civilizations were still struggling with basic recording systems, the Maya had already developed such a complex calendar. The symbol is believed to represent the day 7 Manik, meaning 7 deer in the ancient Maya language. But the significance goes beyond a single day. It provides evidence that the Maya had developed a fully functional writing system very early on. Not only did it include visual symbols, but also phonetic elements, a major milestone in the evolution of written language. This discovery led researchers like Dmitry Belyaev to emphasize that we may have underestimated the sophistication of early Maya civilization. So what makes the Tzolk'in calendar so unique? Unlike many ancient calendars that are based on the movements of the sun, moon, or stars, the Tzolk'in is believed to be purely mathematical in origin. It consists of 260 days, created by combining 20-day names with 13 numbers, a system that is remarkably logical when you think about it. What's even more fascinating is that this calendar didn't just exist in the past. To this day, some indigenous Maya communities still use the Tzolk'in in their rituals and spiritual life. In other words, it's not just a way of measuring time, it's a living part of their cultural identity. And when it comes to the Maya, you probably already know, they were once one of the most brilliant civilizations in human history. They flourished across southern Mexico and Central America, leaving behind monumental architecture, advanced knowledge of astronomy and mathematics, and rich artistic traditions. As early as around 2000 BC, the Maya began laying the foundations of their society. By the early centuries AD, they had formed numerous independent city-states and reached remarkable levels of prosperity. But then, something strange happened. One by one, Maya cities and kingdoms declined and mysteriously disappeared around the 10th century. There was no clear explanation, no definitive evidence of a massive war, just an almost complete vanishing. Only a few communities managed to survive longer, especially in the Yucatan Peninsula, before eventually falling in the 16th century during the Spanish conquest. And now, thousands of years later, those small stone fragments are speaking again, telling the story of a civilization that once stood at the peak of knowledge. So what do you think? A calendar not based on astronomy, yet lasting for thousands of years? Was it purely mathematics, or does it hide deeper knowledge that modern humanity has yet to fully understand? If you have any thoughts, feel free to share them in the comments below so we can discuss together. Ancient remains reveal our mermaid-like ancestors. My friend, have you ever wondered what our ancestors were really like? Were they simply land-based hunters, or did they do things that still seem almost unbelievable today? If you've ever asked yourself that question but never found a clear answer, then let's take a look at what scientists have discovered. A research team led by Professor Eric Trinkhaus, an anthropologist at Washington University in St. Louis, analyzed 77 ancient skeletons. Among them were 23 Neanderthals, our close human relatives who lived between 30,000 and 50,000 years ago before going extinct. At first, everything seemed normal, until the researchers noticed something very unusual. About half of the Neanderthal skeletons showed signs of a condition known as surfer's ear. This condition, also called external auditory exostosis (EAE), involves abnormal bone growth in the ear canal. In modern humans, it typically appears in people who are frequently exposed to cold, wet, and windy environments, such as surfers, kayakers, or those who spend long periods in the water. So the big question is, why would such a trait appear in Neanderthals, people we once believed lived mostly in caves and hunted on land? According to researchers, this suggests a completely different possibility. Neanderthals may have spent a significant amount of time in the water. They were not just land hunters. They may also have been skilled divers, regularly entering cold seas or rivers in search of food. Hearing this, does your image of them begin to change? They were not simply rough, primitive humans chasing mammoths across open plains, but highly adaptable beings, capable of surviving in harsh environments, and possibly even hunting underwater. This discovery also reshapes our understanding of their diet. In the past, scientists believed Neanderthals mainly consumed large land animals, but now it seems they may have also relied on marine food sources, making them more similar to modern humans than previously thought. Not only that, this trait suggests they could survive in colder and wetter environments than scientists once assumed. But the story doesn't end there. Even though Neanderthals went extinct long ago, they didn't completely disappear from history. In recent years, genetic studies have shown that there were multiple instances of interbreeding between Homo sapiens, modern humans, and Neanderthals. In other words, a part of them still lives on within you. Interestingly, people in Northern Europe tend to carry higher amounts of Neanderthal DNA, which may contribute to stronger immune responses against certain diseases. Some scientists even suggest that Neanderthals may have been physically stronger and more robust than modern humans. From just a small detail in the structure of the ear bones, an entirely new picture of our ancestors' way of life begins to emerge. Very different from what we once imagined. Scientists truly are remarkable, aren't they? So if one day science proves that our ancestors really did dive deep into the water to survive, would you still look at human history the same way? As for me, I've already started to see things differently, but exactly how different? Well, perhaps we'll need more time and more discoveries like this before we can fully understand the truth. 28 mysterious skeletons reveal a tragedy sparked by a children's game. What would you think if I told you that some tragedies begin with the smallest, most unexpected things? A simple game, a moment of impulse, or an accidental act, and suddenly, everything spirals out of control. It sounds hard to believe, doesn't it? But this is a real story that took place in the ancient town of Agaligmiut in Alaska, USA. Here, a research team led by archaeologists Rick Knecht and Charlotta Hillerdahl from the University of Aberdeen, Scotland, discovered a mass grave containing 28 skeletons dating back around 350 years. At first, it seemed like a typical archaeological find, but as they dug deeper, they realized this was no ordinary burial. It was the physical evidence of a tragedy long preserved in the oral traditions of the Yupik people. The story begins with a simple dart game between two children. In an unfortunate moment, one boy accidentally blinded the other. But instead of ending there, the situation escalated when the injured child's father sought revenge. He blinded both eyes of the other boy. At this point, you can probably sense things starting to go terribly wrong. From that single act of retaliation, a cycle of violence began. The victim's relatives struck back. Then came more revenge, and more again. What started as a personal conflict between two families quickly escalated into a larger feud, eventually engulfing the entire community. Attacks involving darts and bows became increasingly common, turning a child's game into a real and deadly conflict. In the end, the flames of hatred spread across regions of Alaska and Yukon. The 28 skeletons discovered are believed to be the final victims of that tragic chain of events. What deeply disturbed archaeologists was not just the number of victims, but their condition. The remains showed that the victims had been bound with grass ropes before being executed and burned. Some even bore signs of post-mortem violence. For example, one skeleton had a puncture wound through the back of the skull, likely from a spear or arrow. But perhaps the most heartbreaking detail is that most of the victims were women and children. Only one skeleton belonged to a man of fighting age. This suggests that the men may have already been killed in earlier ambushes or battles, leaving behind the most vulnerable, who then became the final targets. According to archaeologist Rick Knecht, this conflict took place during the period known as the Little Ice Age, a time of harsh climate conditions that led to food shortages. When resources become scarce, even the smallest conflict can erupt into disaster. Beyond the skeletons, researchers also uncovered more than 60,000 artifacts, remarkably well preserved by permafrost. These included dolls, ceremonial masks, small figurines, and grass-woven baskets, items once part of everyday life for the people who lived there. These objects may seem simple, but they tell a very different story. A peaceful life that existed before everything was consumed by violence. Just think about it. How could something as innocent as a children's game lead to such devastation? It almost seems unreal, doesn't it? It goes to show that sometimes the most dangerous force isn't a weapon, but revenge without an end. So if you had lived in that time, watching the conflict escalate day by day, would you have tried to stop it from the beginning, or would you have been pulled into a cycle no one could escape? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. 7,000-year-old skeleton, buried in a strange position in Germany. Some archaeological discoveries make people pause for a few seconds, not because they are grand, but because they are simply unusual. And the skeleton found in northeastern Germany is exactly such a case, a burial method never before recorded in Europe. The story begins in a Mesolithic site near the village of Großfredenwalde in northeastern Germany. There, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a man dating back around 7,000 years, buried in a highly unusual position. Instead of being laid to rest horizontally, as is typical, the man was placed into a deep vertical pit, over 5 feet deep, almost like a small well dug specifically for burial. His body was kept upright by filling sand up to his knees, creating a natural support to prevent him from falling over. The upper part of the skeleton had been damaged over time, but the remaining structure was enough for researchers to determine that this was not an accident or a random occurrence. Everything suggests it was a deliberate burial practice. The site itself dates back about 8,500 years to the Mesolithic period, a time when people in Europe primarily survived through hunting, gathering, and fishing. They were highly mobile and rarely settled in one place for long. For that reason, the existence of an organized burial site here is already remarkable, let alone such a unique burial method. According to Thomas Terberger, the lead archaeologist of the excavation, this is one of the oldest cemeteries ever discovered in Central Europe. And among all the skeletons found at the site, only this man was buried in an upright position, making him a mysterious exception. This raises an important question. Why bury someone this way? Researchers still don't have a definitive answer. However, based on the arrangement of the bones and the structure of the burial pit, they believe the body was placed there carefully, possibly as part of a ritual or connected to the spiritual beliefs of the community at the time. Of course, this wasn't the only discovery at the site. In total, experts uncovered 9 skeletons, including 5 children over the age of 6. Notably, the remains of an infant dating back about 8,400 years were found with its arms folded across the chest, a detail suggesting care and symbolic meaning in the burial process. These findings show that even in such a distant and challenging time, humans already practiced meaningful burial rituals. They didn't just bury the dead, they expressed beliefs, emotions, and their understanding of death. Returning to the man buried upright, perhaps he held a special status within his community. Or maybe his death was unusual, requiring a different kind of ritual. Or perhaps, more simply, people at the time believed the soul needed to stand in order to pass into the afterlife. Whatever the reason, this discovery raises more questions than answers. And sometimes, it's precisely those unanswered mysteries that make history so fascinating, don't you think? 97. Deformed skeletons in a 215 square feet house reveal a 5,000-year-old epidemic in China. In an ancient village in northern China, archaeologists encountered a scene that looked like a tragedy frozen in time. The discovery of 97 skeletons piled together inside a small house of only about 215 square feet. Such a confined space, yet it held nearly 100 skeletons of all ages, from children and teenagers to the elderly. What does that tell you? Doesn't it suggest that this was not an ordinary burial site, but the aftermath of a catastrophic event that occurred around 5,000 years ago? Through analysis, scientists concluded that all of these individuals were residents of the very same village. They were not brought in from elsewhere. They were people who had lived, worked, and likely endured their final desperate days together. So what happened? The most widely accepted theory among experts is that this was the result of an ancient epidemic, possibly similar to the plague. At a time when medicine did not yet exist, once disease broke out, people had virtually no way to control or treat it. As villagers began falling ill in large numbers, fear likely spread even faster than the disease itself. To prevent further infection, they may have placed the bodies inside a single house as a form of isolation from the rest of the community. But as the death toll continued to rise, that small house gradually became a place filled with bodies. Inside, the scene becomes even more haunting. The skeletons on the northern side of the house were relatively intact, as if they had been carefully placed. But on the southern side, everything was completely different. Bones were scattered and piled on top of one another in layers, forming a chaotic mass. This suggests that at first, there may have been some order. But as the number of deaths exceeded their ability to manage, everything turned rushed and chaotic. And that's not all. In one corner of the house, archaeologists also found signs of burning. It's possible that a fire broke out, causing wooden beams to collapse, further deforming and disturbing the skeletons beneath. This village is part of the Manga site, one of the largest and best preserved archaeological sites ever discovered in China. Beyond the skeletons, researchers also uncovered numerous artifacts, including farming tools, pottery, and hunting weapons. These findings reveal that before the disaster, this had been a stable and organized community, with a relatively developed and sustainable way of life. But all it took was a single epidemic, and everything collapsed in a short period of time. 97 people, 97 lives, gathered into one small space, not by choice, but by circumstance. It's truly heartbreaking, isn't it? 60,000-year-old fossilized mammoth skeleton. Just imagine an ordinary workday, an excavator humming steadily, dirt being moved like any other day, and then a sudden clink beneath the bucket changes everything in an instant. Not rock, not metal, but something pale, curved, and slowly emerging from deep within the soil. If you were there, what would you think you had just uncovered? As for the excavators, what they discovered left them absolutely thrilled. A fossilized mammoth skeleton estimated to be 60,000 years old. The story began when Mr. McEwen and his grandson, Ethan Beasley, were using an excavator to dig on their family's commercial property. It seemed like a routine job, progressing just like any other day, until the machine suddenly struck something unusually hard beneath the ground. At first, they probably assumed it was just a large rock or a thick tree root, but as more soil was cleared away, what appeared made them freeze in place, a massive tusk measuring about 6 feet long. Just imagine that moment. You're digging normally, and suddenly a giant tooth emerges from the earth. What would that feel like? Realizing this was no ordinary object, the family immediately contacted paleontology experts. Once the scientists arrived, the truth slowly came to light. It wasn't just a tusk, it was an almost complete fossil skeleton of a mammoth, a species that went extinct tens of thousands of years ago. According to experts, the skeleton dates back around 60,000 years and belonged to a female mammoth. It wasn't particularly large compared to others of its kind, standing about 9 feet tall, smaller than many specimens previously discovered. But what makes this find truly remarkable is not just its age, it's the incredible level of preservation. The skull remains clearly visible. The ribs and lower jaw have retained much of their original structure. Only a few leg bones are missing or damaged due to the passage of time. This is extremely rare, as most fossils are scattered or destroyed over tens of thousands of years. Did you know that for a skeleton to remain in such condition, the animal must have been buried very quickly after death, before scavengers or environmental factors could break it down? That means the very land this family owns was once the resting place of a massive Ice Age creature. After completing the excavation, the McEwen family made a decision that earned deep respect from the scientific community. They donated the entire fossil skeleton to the Perot Museum in Texas. It may sound simple, but think about it. A fossil like this could easily be sold for a very high price at auction. If that had happened, it might have ended up in the hands of private collectors, depriving scientists of the chance to study and learn more about this ancient species. By choosing to donate it, the family not only helped preserve the specimen, but also opened the door for researchers to continue uncovering secrets from Earth's distant past. A random touch that connects the present to 60,000 years ago. What could be more incredible than that? As you can see, the ancient world truly has a way of pulling us in, doesn't it? From ancient artifacts, skeletal remains, and mummies, each carrying its own story, to ancient tombs that hold secrets for hundreds, even thousands of years. All of it makes us look at history from a completely different perspective. So, what part of the past fascinates you the most? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to give ancient history a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any more incredible discoveries. For now, goodbye, and see you next time.